Carson helped produce eco-village environments at more than 200 major events and music festivals and has produced 15 tours around the world, bringing educators, activists, and entertainers into communities to raise awareness about sustainability. After 8 years as the executive director of the Sustainable Living Roadshow, Carson helped create and launch 2 community event centers in San Francisco. One is the Intermission San Francisco and Oakland Place for Sustainable Living. He is passionate about creative business and strategies and can be used to repurpose land or real estate assets into projects that benefit communities and enhance localized sustainability. So I'm excited that Zach's going to moderate this panel. This afternoon, you can also join them for a breakout session. Let me welcome up to the stage Kevin Dowling. Kevin is our general manager. Guys, go ahead and come sit down. Kevin Dowling is our general manager of our Northern Tier High Adventure Base up in Ely, Minnesota. Greg Harmon from the Blue Ridge Council. That feels like an NFL game. Clap. Yeah. Greg Harmon from the Blue Ridge Council, the camping director at the Blue Ridge Council. And Michael Jacobus, who is the executive director of the Irvine Ranch Outdoor Education Center. So, Zach, the conversation's yours.
You got it. Thank you. Let's see here. Well, for some reason the slide... Can you guys all hear me on the mic? Yeah. All right. Well, the slideshow isn't really playing. Just don't push slideshow because it freezes every time for some... You can try it. All right. Should I just sit right here?
We left you the throne in the middle.
Okay. Hello, everyone. So this panel is on sustainability leadership in scouting. Just wanted to start real quick, introduce myself, a little bit more on the background that John gave, and then we'll get into sort of a conversation about how these guys view sustainability leadership. So I grew up in Philadelphia. I was never a scout and didn't really know too much about scouting other than attending like the local scout fair occasionally growing up. I did go to summer camp though for 11 summers, was a counselor and a camper, waterfront director, outdoor director. So I really get the values and traditions and the experiences and the growth and development that happens through outing camping experiences. I also did an outward bound trip, was out in the wilderness for 81 days, Arizona, Utah, Mexico, backpacking, and it was also during the time that Castaway, the movie, came out. So got a lot of comments about, you know, what are you going to do when you get back to reality, Castaway? And the ironic part was that word reality had really shifted for me. It went from sort of this built environment to one of natural environment, and it was sort of that turning point in my life that I developed a deep spiritual connection and desire to protect and understand sort of the wilderness and nature on a much deeper level than I ever had. So although I've never been a scout, I feel after learning so much that the values embedded in the program and the development that happens through going through it, I really understand and I embrace. So I went to University of Vermont, and my thesis there was I converted a bus to run on recycled vegetable oil. I spent the next 4 months touring across the country, teaching people about peak oil and alternative fuels and energy. The reason I think this is relevant is that was in 2004 and 2005, where the word biofuel wasn't really known by anyone. Solar hadn't really penetrated the markets yet. Sustainability wasn't a term that people knew. This movement, which now officially I think is no longer a trend, pretty obviously is now a movement, is, dates back to when the Scouts started, but really in our culture and our time is one that began just like 10 years ago in mainstream U.S. society. So over the last 10 years, I think we've come a really long way when you think that no one really knew solar or biofuels less than a decade ago. I did spend the last 10 years, as John said, producing eco-festivals across the country and around the world, sort of like the eco-carnies. We had about 30 people on the road for months at a time setting up eco-villages. So the perspective I was able to gain through those tours was really about watching culture evolve from the front lines in the United States. Watching the movements of the localization of the shared economy, of local food, local energy, seeing how communities were implementing strategies, from the individual to the community to city and states, how legislation was changing, how people's understanding of this word sustainability was evolving. I was fortunate enough to literally be on the front lines of that movement for a decade, and got tired of touring and started to settle down, where I was lucky enough to land at Presidio Graduate School with John and Cynthia and a whole host of other people actually here, the other John too. And, that has been sort of my transition for me as a career into helping others evolve and understand and gain more of sort of the academic background around evaluating change and understanding change. From a corporate level, from a societal level, from a cultural level. So that's a little bit about my background. Moving on, I guess we won't really use the slide because it's not working, but this summer, as John mentioned, I visited 35 camps across the country, and my goal was to just understand sustainability and how Scouts really view sustainability. Not being a part of Scouting, I wasn't really sure, so it was more like an investigative reporting trip. I visited 30 camps across the country, all the high adventure bases, 4 regional council offices, and spent time with people like these guys, understanding their business model and their challenges and their successes. I feel like Cynthia Scott was talking about the tomato suit. And I almost feel like I took that role of the tomato soup, where I wasn't national, BSA national. I was a sort of a consultant and an outside force, which I think encouraged people to open up to me in ways that they may not have opened up to their boss or someone that controls their paycheck or, their marketing. And so I really feel like in a very quick 10-week period, I got a true understanding of the challenges and the exciting potentials that Boy Scouts have to lead. So just to get into it now, these 3 gentlemen run camps that are very different. Michael is in Irvine. His center, it's an environmental education and outdoor center. It's a pretty new facility in a warm environment. Greg is in the Blue Ridge Council right about here, 4-season environment. It's pretty much a traditional Boy Scout camp, but I think what separated his camp was the fun that people were having, the interactivity and the ideas around how to animate life sciences as an education through fun. And over here we have, the high adventure bases up in Northern Tier, which is really about the values of wilderness and the experience of taking people and connecting them to nature. So all 3 of these people, all camp directors and scouting professionals, and all dealing with a lot of the same problems, but have really different environments and platforms which they can expand on and evaluate sustainability. So it's a really cool diversity, and I think hopefully through some of these questions we'll hear from your experiences. So just to start, and we'll just sort of go through however you guys want to answer in whatever order, but really, as people who run these camps, what are the values of sustainability that are most important to you? Again, before you answer that, sustainability, I think, has been in this silo for a really long time, and part of our conversations we've had is about how do we expand that silo, and that's been the definition. So as the sustainability report said, people, planet, and profits. Let's examine sort of these questions through the much larger perspective. So again, what are the values for your camp that you really try to espouse, either through your operations or through your education?
I can start off. I think at Northern Tier, number one, as per yesterday when we were talking about just generational stuff, and Kathleen's presentation is really sustainability in all of the high adventure bases is really based on our staff. Most of the people that come work for us, there's probably over 1,500 of them. They come and work, and they're all about sustainability. And John's referred to the gray hairs and the the people that have no hair, and I certainly fit into that category with my hair. But I think the thing that defines sustainability in our operations are the staffs that we work with and their commitment, all the youth here, and their commitment and the ability to listen to them and hear the ideas that they have, and not just give it lip service, but at least somewhere, do a couple of the things that they suggest. And that's come a long way at Northern Tier. And of course, our challenges are weather. It's very, very cold up there. And some of the things that you could do here, you're not going to do at minus 30 below.
I think that people definitely are most important things. We've got to develop the next generation of leaders. But we also, as the BSA, we have amazing assets in our properties. And so I think that sustainability in many cases has to do with utilizing that property, stewarding it to meet your objectives and your mission. And so for us, that might involve, responsible timber harvesting, things that are going to put money back into our budget so that we can actually deliver our promise, the promise of scouting itself, getting kids outdoors and help them really enjoy our facilities and our different programs.
Well, I think for me, our property, started out as an experiment, and now it's kind of a prototype of what Scout-owned properties could be. We run 30 weeks a year of outdoor ed science camp during the school year from September to June. So the vast majority of the kids who come to our program, they may or may not be Scouts, but they're students from the school districts. So we offer a program that meets an academic curriculum standard, but has sustainable influences in every aspect of their day. From the water bottles we give out when the kids arrive, to the bags. We don't do the plastic water bottles, we don't do the styrofoam. Everything we teach and lead by example with our staff and with the property sends kids home with sustainable responsibility in their head without forcing it down their throats. So I think much like the previous panel said, I think the way we make change and affect this movement is through the young people, but not because we said so, but because this is the example we set and how we live our lives and how we run our program, and then they take that home with them.
Yeah. Yeah, I think your facility is an amazing example, as you
built
mentioned,
it myself, thank you.
of sort of the evolution of what new camps and what camps can strive to evolve.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's an amazing place. With all of those things too, it's a lot of these initiatives around sustainability, they got to come from somewhere. So I'm curious, whether it be the lighting retrofits or fundraising or certain programs, where some of the things that could be categorized under sustainability have come from for all of your camps. Have they been self-started, or have you working groups? How have you become a leader into implementing these ideas, and where they're coming from?
Well, I think that every council should have a conservation committee. And so right off the bat, we have an amazing conservation committee. It's made up of professors, professionals, departments of game and inland fisheries. So we have lots of amazing resources, and we meet 4 times a year. And at each of those meetings, these professionals brainstorm, and they give us new ideas that we can really try and implement. And they really challenge the council to go beyond its comfort zone and to try out new technologies and do new things. But the real pressure comes from our staff itself. And last summer, we had the same thing with styrofoam, and our staff totally revolted on it. The part of the state I'm in doesn't have a very good recycling program. There's not necessarily places you can take that to. And so they decided that we would, for cookout nights and things, we would eliminate all the styrofoam, all the disposables, and that they would volunteer extra time in the evenings to go and run the Hobart and make sure that all the dishes got washed. It was a much more sustainable way. And so our staff are really pushing us to be better leaders in stewardship and sustainability.
Well, for us, it's really the nature of the property. The property that I run was conceived very well to meet certain standards. And again, I'm an Eagle Scout from a family of Eagle Scouts, but we don't do primarily scouting programs. The property itself has 3 academic areas. To me, the funnest one is the ranch camp. The ranch camp is a 200-tree citrus orchard, what we call a living classroom, which is an outdoor garden, which is where we run our sustainability merit badge programs on the weekends, but we run sustainable education during the school year. It's where our beehives are. It's where our composting is. And some of the things that we get to do in that area, in addition to meeting the academic curriculum, when we work with our staff, we use a process called teaching from behind. So we let the kids get dirty. We let them taste the things in the garden. We let them use the pitchfork to flip the compost for us. They actually take part in what we're doing out in the life science area, because that's a living, growing, breathing thing. And then we give them a way to take that home to their own homes or their own schools, and then we follow up and see how that classroom garden is doing, or we will come guest speak, and when I say that, we'll send our staff out to the school to present or to follow up. So to me, it's I heard a term here this week that scared me a little, called greenwash. Like we all talk a good game when it comes to green and sustainability, but it's the follow-up and the continuation, and are you really living it, or did you just throw that bottle in the recycling bin because you were being observed doing it? So I think the real push for us with our staff and our program is to follow up afterwards and continue that ongoing conversation with the school, or in a camp standpoint with those troops or those councils that come to the camp, to make sure that what you're doing is what you're going to be doing next year and what you're going to be doing the next year. And this is how you run your property. This is how you run your staff. So the message is always clear and always the same.
Yeah, I think in Northern Tier, it's definitely staff-driven. Some of the most interesting conversations I have in my office are a couple young staff members who come up and say, "Hey, Kevin, I'd like to talk to you about some new project." And they sit you down, and they do a very, very good job of presenting their cause. And not only in addition to that, they have a plan. And, you know, when you're sitting there listening to these people, hey, you know, you got to work with them, and it is definitely staff-driven. You know, I had a son who worked at Northern Tier, and he's now an environmental, you know, graduated and an environmental consultant, sustainability, you know, in the DC area. And a lot of that came from just being on staff. And so staff has a lot to do. Some of us older guys, they can turn us around. They can turn us around.
And just to follow up, if any of you guys want to answer this, do you guys encourage that behavior out of your staff? Is it something you look for when you're hiring, or is this just happen through history and just occurrences of passionate participants?
I think it's the nature of the type of people that come to the high adventure bases, number one. I mean, they're all in that type of educational background in colleges. And I mean, certainly have our engineers and everything, but we certainly have our share of environmentalists.
We do a lot in our summer camps to really make everyone feel like family. And as far as that goes, you know, an open door policy is always there. We preach that, but I think we go beyond that and really empowering even our youngest staff to interact with our senior staff, with our, you know, camping professionals. And we really feel like that's part of our mission. You know, we want these youth to interact with adults. We want them to build, you know, great skills with communication, and we want them to really be able to communicate their ideas. Because when you think about our marketing, you know, they're the ones that know what they want, and they're serving their peers, and they're the ones that are going to give us these next great ideas that we need to try and follow through with. So we actually have some programs where we reward staff for good ideas, and we recognize them every week. We have a lot of great evaluation procedures where, you know, adults can come in and write praise coupons, and we make a really big deal out of that. We want staff to go well beyond. We want them to feel like, you know, we're a service industry. We want the people that come to our camps to almost feel like they're on a cruise ship where things are being taken care of for them. And our staff have really stepped up to that and taken ownership, and they believe that, you know, if you talk to one of them, you're talking to the whole family, and it's an image and a very strong brand that we've built through that.
Anything else to add?
Well, I would agree on staff ideas. We had a life science director last year who looked at our orchard and our garden, and she said, "It's really too bad we don't have any woofers here." And me being a city kid, I'm like, "What's a woofer?" And it's there's a group called Worldwide Opportunities on Organic Farms, and the way it was described to me, and I grew up in the Berkeley Hills, so I get permission to use this word, was think the Peace Corps, only horticulture hippie. And I thought, why do we want a bunch of horticulture hippies on the property? Because we're in Orange County and we serve a certain community group. And I'll tell you, it's the best thing we ever did for that part of the academic program. We now provide room and board for between 2 and 4 woofers every 3-month rotation season. These are horticulture volunteers. They give me 20 hours a week in the orchard and the garden. From a director standpoint, I'm like free labor, and they know what they're doing, and they have a passion and an experience and a drive for making our program as cutting edge and organic as possible, and we're shining. I couldn't pay professionals to do this who would arrive with this level of passion, who are young enough to interact with the kids who come to the garden. I mean, we make them go through the BSA app and the youth protection. You know, I have to make sure every adult on the property can interact with youth. But when our kids do a rotation out of life science, and they've met people who worked on a farm in South Korea last month, and they worked on a farm in Ireland 2 months ago, it's so amazing to just watch the kids bubble up and leave learning stuff they didn't know they were learning.
Yeah, so I mean, for everyone listening out in the internet world too, I mean, you hear that passion is a driving force amongst change and amongst implementing programs through all of these things. And through Michael's example, I think it's really a prime example of how the BSA can use their platforms as camps and reach outside of their community to others, from woofers to the shared economy to passionate kids in college looking for a great summer job. Kids are really thirsty to be empowered, to be leaders around sustainability, and as camp directors and scouts, we have the opportunity to provide them platforms to be leaders. And I think within sustainability, that's a really big piece, because the next generation of people, as we heard on the last panel, are just so hungry to be a part of a solution, and camps and the whole experience of scouting really provides one of the greatest platforms for people to be that leader, and that can really change lives. So I know we're closing up here. Just a real quick thing. Sustainability is hard. If it wasn't, if it was an easy road, everyone would be doing it right now. So just real quickly, if there's some roadblocks that have prevented you guys from going there, what are some of those roadblocks? And maybe through the collective, we can help you all find some solutions.
I'd say budget and weather conditions.
Do we have anyone for the budget? Any other?
For us, I would say it's certainly budget is a concern, but attitudes of parents, which I think is why it's important that we have this conversation with our youth. One thing I was thinking when Zach asked me to come up here today was, every time you see a Boy Scout in front of a grocery store, you think popcorn. Every time you want a Thin Mint, you think Girl Scouts. So why can't we get America to think, I wonder what I could do more sustainable around my house, to think Boy Scouts? Because somebody's going to fill that anyway.
Yep.
So it might as well be the kids in the khaki that come out to do the good deed and give you a little homeowner's audit of what you could be doing better. Not selling anything, no upfront pressure, no cookies, just sustainability.
So that's a great thing to close on. I will say, Michael, that from day one, when Scott Harmon and the Merit Badge Task Force, the number one thing that you remember, requirement number one was going to be, let's send youth into their neighborhood and do energy audits in the houses around them. And our youth protection people didn't care for that too much, and also just the concept of doing that early on. That's a big idea, and how we rebrand who we are and how people associate us in that area, whether it be through fundraising products, whether it be service. I think that's one of those things that it was the big idea that came out of the Sustainability Task Force, and also one of the big ideas that came out of the Merit Badge. But it was not the right time at the beginning of the Sustainability Merit Badge to do that. That's the vision where we're going, though. Because I do see a day. No, that's exactly, you were right there. And what's funny about the funding, and I'll just say this afternoon, Brad Farmer's leading a conversation on funding, because sustainability changes the funding conversation with individuals. And it's my own personal belief that in every single council and in all the regions, there are people who are not giving to us today that would give to us if they understood that we were committed to developing environmental leaders for tomorrow. I also believe that there are young people who love scouting, would love to be involved in scouting, but these youth that are here today, if you're 22 years old and you say, I want to get involved in scouting at the local level, where do you put them? They're not there every week to do be a scout, an assistant scoutmaster usually. You put them on I'm a district committee chair in my local district, but I'm not going to put one of them on my committee because they'll get bored to death and never come back to scouting ever again if they're sitting there talking about our camporee in 8 months, So sustainability is one of those ways to get younger, and that's why, Kevin, what you guys are doing in the High Adventure program, your leaders are your youth staff, and we need to pivot as a movement to make that happen to where camp staff are empowered to be leaders in the organization, that we are sustainable. So those sessions this afternoon, I think funding is a big thing, and how we get funding and tell the story about sustainability is different. So let's put our hands together for these leaders in the scouting movement.